Hey there, YouTube. Welcome to Big Mike Beard Wisdom. So today we're going to talk about putting together a financial plan to help get you out of debt, to help get you planning out where you want to be, maybe farther down the line in life. When I was still working at my previous job, there have been rumors and scuttlebutt basically going around that, hey, stuff's not looking so great. Stuff, isn't looking super hot. They've done layoffs in the past. Will they, won't they do layoffs coming up? And it was one of those things where it's like, okay, well, I better do some things to try and get my life in order a little bit. And so basically today we're going to talk about how to track how much money you have going where. And then we'll talk about different strategies you can do in order to try and, find ways to pay off your debt or to move into financial independence and stuff. And then we'll wrap everything up at the end. Probably with bloopers, because this has gone sideways a little bit already. So enough of the YouTube landing page. Let's start looking at some information. So the first step, I think, in order to try and figure out what you're doing with your money is to sit down and actually figure out where everything's going. So, sitting down and figuring out how much your rent and mortgage is, how much you pay for, cable or satellite, your internet bill, your electric bill, water bill, gas, utility, trash. Really, a cell phone bill could probably be on this side, too, because this is stuff that you more or less are going to have no matter what. And then make a list of it. And then put down your monthly payments. And then for me, the way I did it was I kind of forecasted. The electric bill isn't always $200 for me. But I just kind of, this is just an example. But the way I did it when I actually truly did it, my electric bill can be up to $250 is where I've seen it sometimes in the wintertime. And it's just one of those things where it fluctuates as the year goes by. So what I did for any of the bills that can be higher, I went with the highest possible. And the whole reason behind that was basically to give you a worst case scenario kind of living space total. That way okay, it's almost never going to be this high, but this is the highest it could possibly be. And then start making a list of things that you're currently in debt for. So if you've got student loans, you've got a car loan, you've got a handful of credit cards, you've got something else, it's just make a list of it and then kind of put down your monthly payments. So for all of my loans, I almost never pay the exact amount it has on it. I always pay a little bit extra, and that might make your math a little bit easier. But if you're just making the minimum payments or have the minimum payments on there, that's fine too, because it helps you try and forecast how to pay these down in a little bit in the next step. And then the last one is stuff that you have but maybe you don't really need. So car insurance here. This is the only reason why I put car insurance in there is because I've got multiple vehicles. So if I were to drop a couple vehicles, then it would drop the insurance. But Netflix, a lot of people probably have free previews and stuff like that or using trials. Same thing with Disney Plus. So I went with zeros for those. XM, there's different tricks to try and get it a little bit cheaper and stuff. But if you've got two vehicles, I think one of the cheaper plans is doing it for $6 a month. If you've got a gym membership, and then also anything extra. So if you always get coffee or something like that, if there's a way that you can kind of figure out how much that is, kind of put that in here as well. That way you'll have 3 columns and 3 groups. What you absolutely need and probably won't change. The debt you need to pay down. And then all the extra things that you have. And then if you wind up totaling everything up, that gives you basically how much cash you have going out in a month's time. So in this example, it's $3,601.95. Now, it's not going to be the same for everybody. Some people will or won't have student loans. Some people will or won't have car loans. Some people have a whole bunch of credit cards. Some people have no credit cards. So it all kind of depends. But if you've got stuff maybe you've got subscriptions like Netflix, Disney, even things like BarkBox or other subscription services where they send you things. Or even if you've bought something off of Amazon and signed up for renewals for it. That way maybe they keep sending you more deodorant or maybe they send you more dog treats. But try and log everything in. That way you're able to see how much it's going to be a month. And then once you get this figured out, this might be something that kind of opens your eyes. Because even at this amount of money, so it's $3601.95, if you were to multiply that by 12 months, you're looking at a pretty good chunk of change. And then even if you were making, let's say, 50 grand a year, you're not actually taking home that 50 grand because it's getting taxed. You're having insurances taken out of it and stuff like that. So it's going to compare it against your actual take-home pay. And you might be kind of surprised with how you're doing. It might be one of those situations where you're gaining, so you're making more money than you're spending, which is good. Or you might actually be spending more money than you're making, which would obviously be bad. But either way, setting this up helps to open up your eyes and stuff to see where things are going. Some people do this as it is, but like once you get married, maybe your process for doing things and their process for doing things aren't always the same things. And then the big thing is to communicate with each other. That way you know exactly where the money's going, exactly how things are kind of getting set up. And, you don't need to know that, whatever they're buying on their credit card. It's just, okay, what's like for these, when I did it, I set the minimum payment. For the next steps, the credit card is going to get a little complicated just because if you're continuing to use the card, it'll skew as to what you want to do with the card, at least in my experience. So for a strategy, I really like Dave Ramsey's idea for the 7 baby steps. It's one of those things that as soon as I saw it, it kind of clicked in my head and made pretty good sense. There's some things to it that gets a little bit complicated as you try, but basically the first step is to set aside an emergency fund of about $1,000. If you don't have $1,000 already, then you save up for that $1,000 to work toward that goal. And then the next step is a debt snowball technique. And the debt snowball technique is one of those things where there's different ways to pay down your debt. Mathematically, the best one I think is that, I don't remember if they call it the Debt Avalanche, but it's to set up like how much interest you have by your accounts, and from the most interest to the least amount of interest, and pay it off in that order. And mathematically, it's the one that makes the most sense because it'll save you the most money in the long run. But the debt snowball technique is a little bit different. So debt snowball technique, you would tackle the debt that you have that's the least amount of debt. That way that debt gets paid off. And the money that you would have spent every month going towards that one, you now apply it to the next lowest debt until that gets paid off. And then you keep continuing the process. And that'll kind of move you forward, not super fastly paying stuff off. It depends on how many loans you had, how many credit cards you have, how much debt you were in. But it's one of those things where you'll notice little victories as you go. And the little victories kind of stick with you and keep you motivated to keep going with it. Once you work your way out, and then you're out of debt pretty much through with everything except for your home loan and stuff, then you want to try and get a 3 to 6 months emergency fund. Now, in the beginning, this is going to sound crazy because of all the debt that you have. It's going to make a really big difference once you get the debt snowball rolling and once you get everything paid off as to how much 3 to 6 months emergency fund actually means monetarily. Then once you have that set up, he recommends doing investing 15% in your retirement. And the whole time prior to this, he often recommends, at least in his podcasts and his YouTube videos and stuff, not investing in the meantime. So when you first start off, setting up the emergency fund, doing the debt snowball, and then setting up the 3 to 6 months emergency fund, you need to stop investing. And by stopping investing, you're paying off your debt faster, depending on how much money you were putting away for investments. And it might be something where maybe you're doing the debt snowball for 1 or 2 years, or maybe you're doing it for 3 to 4. It's one of those things where in the long run of your entire life, it's a short amount of time that once you get clear of the debt and then you stay out of debt, you can make up the time that you lost. But once you get to step 4, it's basically investing in your retirement. Then step 5 is save for your kids' college. And then even if you don't have kids, so if you're really young and you don't have any kids yet, it's one of those things where it might be good to do just in case something unexpected happens and someone gets pregnant. So, but the 5th step is saving for your kids' college. Then the 6th step is pay off your home. And this is one of those steps that would be huge. Just because depending on how much money you have in your house and stuff, it's going to be one of those things where once your home is paid off, not only are you no longer paying that large chunk of mortgage anymore, but now when you go to sell your home or maybe move again, now you've got the whole value of your house coming with you, as opposed to just whatever equity you had. And then with that paid off, it should be relatively easy because now you're completely out of debt, no debt at all. It's just whatever your living expenses are, and in order to build wealth and to give. So this is one of those things where, I mean, you'll be able to build wealth, and obviously the more wealth that you build, the more you can give. And giving is one of those things where it's almost like you're putting positivity out in the world. So you're putting out good things in the world. And I'm kind of one of those guys that always kind of believes in, like, be it karma or you get what you give kind of thing. So it's one of those things where, you know, if you were able to give more, then maybe you would receive more. That sounds greedy. Okay, I don't know. Maybe we'll just skip that one. I don't think I'm allowed to talk about that anymore. Okay, but let's jump back into the bills. So here we are looking at the bills again. And then, so mortgage and rent was like $1,200. Obviously, if you get the baby step 6, and you wind up paying that down. For me, when I set mine up, mine was based off of the entire amount that I pay per month. So that's including the escrow and the insurance. So I would recommend you do that. That way, whenever you set this up, you have that kind of figured in, because it's going to take a while until you're able to hit step 7 or step 6. So one of the early things you could be doing is trying to figure out, of the extra things that you have, what do you want to cut out? So you don't want to give up any cars. So that's going to stay the same. Netflix and Disney, maybe you have trials on, but they're going to come due soon. Maybe you go ahead and cancel them before the trial ends. That way you don't want to having to spend anything extra. The gym, you're like, I'm not really going. Especially with COVID nowadays, I don't even know if gyms are still billing people or not. So, but basically you're able to cut maybe like that $50 out. And then cash, so this was kind of like the generic term. So it was like, you know, you take money out and you spend it. You're not actually keeping track of where it's going, but it's money that you've, you know, allocated to. It must be stuff that you're able to spend money on. So some people drink coffee. You know, some people like to eat out every lunch as opposed to maybe packing a lunch every now and then. So it's one of those things where if you could cut it down just a little bit. So this, I just cut it down by about $100. So it's not a lot that was cut out. So total, we cut out about $150. So instead of $722, you're now looking at $572. So that could save you a little bit, because then that's $150 that could be applied somewhere else, which would be mostly towards these debt. And the big thing here is that you want to set a priority by the lowest one in order to do the debt snowball. So theoretically looking at this, if this was going by, like if all these were the exact same interest rate, then your monthly payment would directly reflect like how much you want to paying off of it. So like this $50 one would obviously be the lowest one if all interest rates were all the same on all the loans and stuff as well. So this would be the first one that would get tackled. So you would stop spending on credit card number 3. And you'd pay that one off first. Then you would stop spending on credit card number 1, and instead of just spending the $50 here back in your free stuff I want to do things with, you would now apply that $50 towards this account. So this one should get paid off a little bit faster based off of what you did. So once this is paid off, now you've got 1 and 2 paid off, now you go to tackle number 3. And then with this car loan here, again, this is really kind of stupid simplified. So in real life, it's all going to be kind of different, because maybe you're going to keep spending on your credit cards, so which will complicate this. In which case, maybe you set a goal that you want this to always be under $100 for your minimum payment. So it all depends on how you want to handle it. But now you're tackling this car loan. Theoretically, the best way to do it would be not to be continuing to spend on 1, not grabbing 3 ever again and spending money. So leaving these down at zeros, and maybe even closing the accounts. And then putting the money that you had here now going into this one as well. So this will help you pay this one off even faster. So you can kind of see how it kind of stacks up. Essentially, once you get all the loans paid off and all the debt is gone, then you're able to take into the little things that you still have. So after cutting down, and your standard living expenses, and you're able to see that the total monthly payments went from $3601.95 to $2451.95. So this is pretty much all imaginary, but it should be relatively close, maybe to like somebody's real life events. So, but in that baby step where you set up for a 3-month fund, you can see the difference now is that essentially the reason why the debt snowball works and why the 3-month fund is after the debt snowball is that here you've got so much money that you have to save up in a month. Whereas once it's trimmed down, you've got almost $1,200 less. So your 3-month fund, instead of having to be just short of like 11 grand, you're just short of 7,500. So you can see that once everything gets paid off, it's a much easier and you're able to breathe a little bit better. If you follow the way that Dave Ramsey puts it out, there's a lot of stuff, and I recommend checking out his website and looking at how he presents it, because it makes a lot of sense. It's one of those things where it's not, rocket science. It's not something super crazy. It's stuff that you can follow. They've got different things where they do, I think whenever you get out of debt, you do some sort of yell or scream or something. But it's one of those things where following him on his website, and I think they even have things you can purchase and stuff to try and track things yourself, might help you go through this and do it better and stick to it. So for us, given the situation and everything that happened to us, we're still spending on the credit cards, but we're trying to cut back. So this like cash expenditure that we would have had, it was essentially always going on the credit cards. And then also there's weird stuff, so like the cable bill is on my credit card. So it's weird how some of the stuff kind of interlaces a little bit. But as long as you've got an idea of like a worst case scenario monthly wise, you're able to kind of see whether or not you're in trouble or you're not in trouble. So, and then this also allows you to do stuff that you can reevaluate. Maybe you're unhappy with the current position that you're in at your job, and you're like, oh man, it'd be really nice to do something else, or to start over, or to start my own business, or try doing YouTube videos. How much money do I need to make, or how much money do I really need in order to do this? Or if you work a job where maybe you don't get a visit with your family enough, one of those things where you're constantly doing things, you're constantly working, and you're not able to see your family like you would like to. Back to the baby steps. I'm currently in step number 2, handling that snowball technique, and there's some weird curveballs. So like, let's say you've got a loan and maybe it's got a 2-year interest-free, same as cash type of thing. And it might be one of those things where that needs to be a higher priority. That way you're able to completely avoid that coming up. So sitting down and figuring this out kind of helped me right before I was laid off. It was one of those things where I was able to kind of knock some bills out and try and free up some breathing room and then have some money set off to the side. That way, when the worst did happen and I won the anti-lottery and got laid off, it was one of those things where I knew I wasn't in as bad a shape as if I hadn't spent almost a year trying to do this in order to get ready for it. So hopefully this helps you guys. Hopefully it helps you save a little bit of money. Maybe it helps you pay off some debt. Maybe it inspires you to check out, different ways to do things. There's a million different strategies for doing stuff. You don't have to do it the same way I did, and then you don't have to follow it exactly the way I did it. So it's one of those things where, as time goes, just do whatever you can, see where you get land, make a YouTube video about it. So I'd appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, you guys have a good one. I'll see you with the next video. So this is just the landing page for the. So this is YouTube. Now the video gets longer and you forgot to do stuff. So this is the YouTube. Oh crap. So you're building up better. You're building up more. You're making more money.